Alright guys, welcome back to F1 Drama. Lewis Hamilton has made clear his frustration with the Mercedes W14, saying he feels miserable trying to get on top of this car, and despite George Russell with a solid qualifying performance, Hamilton just doesn't quite feel the way this car wants to operate beneath him right now, and that's affecting his performance and his motivation, it seems, for the season to come. Will things turn around in the race tomorrow? Hamilton will start P7 after qualifying P8 given Leclerc's penalty. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always. This is the front of the grid, of course, with Perez, Alonso, Russell got to P3, of course, with Leclerc getting that penalty. Hamilton up to P7, but behind Sainz, Stroll, Ocon, about 3.5 tenths off George Russell. And despite the entire weekend, it felt like, for at least practice, Hamilton and Russell were pretty much all the time within a tenth of each other. But come qualifying, Hamilton was losing almost all of his time in the first sector. He actually had a faster Sector 3 than Russell did. Sector 2 was quite similar, but in that fast, sweeping first sector when confidence in the car is so important, he was losing a fair chunk of time to Russell, and Russell was actually quite happy about the way the car felt. There just isn't quite the performance from the Mercedes to match the Astons or potentially the Red Bulls, of course. But Lewis Hamilton feels a little bit lost with the way his car is currently performing, right? And of course, this comes amid all the drama with Toto Wolff yesterday, where he talked about Hamilton's future and says, look, if we can't prove to Lewis that we can give him a car in the next year or so that's going to be able to compete for another world championship, then I wouldn't blame him leaving the team. Now, I still wouldn't expect Hamilton to ever leave the team. I think he will either retire or he will, continue at Mercedes for longer. But this is one of Toto Wolff's quotes. If Lewis wants to win another championship, he needs to make sure he has the car. If we can't demonstrate we can give that to him in the next couple of years, he needs to look elsewhere. And he goes on to say that he wouldn't hold a grudge if within the next 2 years, Hamilton looked to another team for an opportunity. Now, look, the W14, he described Hamilton after practice on Friday that, he was asked the question, is it better than the W13? And he said, yeah, it feels about the same. It doesn't bounce. Hamilton's spine is probably more happy with this car than the previous one, but in terms of pace and in terms of gap to the leaders, it's not too dissimilar, right? 9 tenths in the end off where Perez was, and of course, that's a Sergio Perez that was consistently 5 tenths pretty much in qualifying behind where Verstappen was. Verstappen's Q1 lap would have been good enough for P4, miles ahead of Hamilton on just that one lap he did in Q1 before the engine failure he had in Q2, right, which means he's starting P15. So that's the thing, Leclerc could only get within 1.5 tenths of Perez, and that's Leclerc, arguably best qualifier on the grid, versus Perez, pretty average at best qualifier. In fairness, he did get pole here last year and did a great lap again today, but still, Verstappen might have had a 127 in him, and I wouldn't be surprised if he did. Now, Toto Wolff did make it very clear that the car is going to look very different today, as it will do in a few races' time. We know that probably from Imola, whenever their big upgrade is going to arrive, Toto Wolff said just today the car is going to look very different within a couple of months based on the decisions we have taken and the direction of development we have embarked on. So they've made a call, they know what way they want to go, and they know how the car's going to look different in a few races' time. But for now, they're stuck with what they have. I know that Hamilton wants to try and practice patience here, but he was clearly quite fed up after practice on Friday, and today he looked pretty downbeat, to be honest, about the whole thing. Russell seemed relatively upbeat, actually, and you can't really blame him after out-qualifying Hamilton by 3.7 tenths of a second. And, well, as Hamilton says, I just struggled to extract the performance. The car is what it is. I mean, George did a great job. He's right up there on the second row. So the car's obviously got some performance in it, but I just don't feel connected to this car. No matter what I do, no matter what I change, I just can't get confidence in it. Pretty interesting in a way, because there were some questions about the setup that Hamilton had gone for compared to Russell. And obviously Hamilton is probably experimenting a little bit more than Russell is, but whatever they did on Russell's side of the garage was obviously working better, because Hamilton and Russell, for pretty much the entire time they've been teammates, in qualifying, in practice, they'll be almost always within 1/10, right? One way or the other. You almost always know exactly where the Mercedes is, because both drivers are so good that you can see right where the car is. They'll go and do their laps and they'll finish within 1/2 tenth of each other, is how it's been for the last season and a half, really. So for today it to happen where Hamilton's way off the pace of Russell, like, something must have gone on there with the setup. I don't think Hamilton's forgotten how to drive or anything, but it's just something with this car that Hamilton can't quite get the grips of right now, even though Russell's side of their garage seems to have figured it out. So whether Hamilton can take some notes there, we'll see, but they seem to deviate a bit in their direction, and Russell took advantage of it. So look, he says he struggled in the high speed, which is where, if you've not got the confidence, that's where you're going to struggle a bit, right? In that fast Sector 1, that's where you're going to lose the time, which is what was happening, of course, to Hamilton. Now, there were some suggestions that Hamilton had gone for a more race-based setup than Russell had, but after qualifying, Russell said, hey, I've set up my car for the race as well. He said, we've got a more race-based setup than for qualifying, which nowadays most teams will do, just because race pace is way more important now, given the fact that you can actually overtake in the new regulations. So qualifying, I mean, Verstappen tomorrow will go from P15 to well into the points. You know, he probably will get a podium tomorrow at the least. And we know that's what Red Bull did in Bahrain. Despite getting the 1-2 in qualifying, they were also 1-2 in the race by a mile because they set their car up for the race. That's what teams do nowadays. Mercedes probably did that as well, but it's not like that's going to give them an advantage over their competitors necessarily, because everyone kind of does this nowadays, because you can follow easier, you can overtake easier. These are the words then from Hamilton, because, you know, he seems pretty fed up, pretty downbeat, and even used the word we'll see here in a second, miserable, to describe how he feels trying to figure out this car.
I don't know. I feel like I struggled with the car in the high speed particularly, but just don't feel the car underneath me. I just don't feel connected to this car, and I can't get it, so I don't really know what I'm going to do about that.
How difficult is that then if you don't feel connected to the car? Because throughout your career,
it's miserable.
But we've known you to drive around problems. We've always seen you overcome things. So how tough is this right now?
It's tough, you know. I'm giving it absolutely everything. I'm here as late as I can be every day. I'm preparing the best you can, and I just get in the car and I just can't connect with it. It's yeah. I don't really know what to say about it, but it's good that George had a good run today, so it's great. He'll be able to hopefully score some good points for the team, and I'll try and recover tomorrow. It's a new day, so I'll give it everything.
He says it's miserable. I'm giving absolutely everything. I'm here as late as possible every day. I'm getting ready as best I can. I get in the car and I just can't connect with it. I really don't know what to say. I'll try to recover tomorrow. It's a new day, so I'll give it everything. And yeah, the second part of it was like, okay, George had a good run, so it's great. He'll be able to hopefully score some good points for the team, and kind of eliminating himself from too much in those conversations. Of course, in the first year we went to Saudi Arabia, had a great race in Jeddah, obviously got pole position, won the race after all the drama of that weekend. And then last year was out in Q1 after doing all these setups with the car, experiments with the car, and ended up finishing P10 last year for 1 point. This year he's only starting P7, and there's Max and there's Charles behind him that will be wanted to come past. And is he going to be quicker than even a Gasly ahead or a Sainz ahead, or of course Alonso's up there? It seems unlikely, but yeah, who knows what's going to happen in the race. It could be a very chaotic one, as is probably expected here in Saudi Arabia. And as he says, yeah, high-speed corners particularly doesn't really feel in touch with the car. He's trying his best, but it does feel like you can understand why Hamilton's fed up in a way. He spent all of last season, or a large chunk of last season, pushing the team, struggling with the car, trying things out, experimenting to get the car to a point where they could win races at the end of the season. But Russell even said, I believe earlier today, that that was effectively a perfect storm, as in they won that race in Brazil, therefore they thought, oh, we've unlocked it, boys. The car's finally here, the concept is good, let's double down, go again for next season. That led them astray, and now Hamilton's stuck with a car which is basically the same as last year in terms of pure performance relative to the top teams, if not even further back, certainly compared to Red Bull as it stands. You can understand the frustration getting to him, whereas Russell in his career is used to driving a bit of a bad car in general at Williams, so he's probably relishing it a bit more than Hamilton will be. And Hamilton at 38 years of age, can he really be bothered to go through the same process again that he went through last year, in the hope of maybe not even getting a better car next year? Because have Mercedes fallen off the curve in terms of their dominance? Will they be able to get back there? Does he have the confidence they can do that? Obviously, Toto Wolff said if he doesn't, he should maybe consider leaving within a year or two. So, man, difficult time for Mercedes. But fundamentally, their car wasn't that slow today. Like, they were, okay, 6/10-ish in Russell's hands off Perez. Hamilton probably could have been there if the setup was right, or whatever they need to change to get it right on Hamilton's car. Whether they can do that for the race, given parc fermé conditions, potentially unlikely. But yeah, the car doesn't seem too far behind. It's a really tight kind of second back from Red Bull there with Ferrari, Aston and Mercedes. And it does set up a very interesting race where maybe Hamilton's tune will change somewhat. But very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.